All right, everybody, this is Tom Salemi of Device Talks. Welcome back to the Device Talks weekly podcast. We're going to be talking with Kurt Haggstrom. He is the Chief Commercial Officer of Synchron, which is one of those cool neural implant companies you've been reading about in all the press. Good news for you. Not only can you hear from Synchron today, from Kurt Haggstrom today, but he'll be at DeviceTalks West, which is happening on October 18th and 19th in Santa Clara. Kurt's going to be giving a presentation. Synchron is one of the many neurotech companies we'll have there. And Kurt will be giving a presentation. You'll be able to hear directly from him on a much more technical level than he will be giving today. Today, we'll keep it at a higher level. But more important, you'll be able to connect with him, ask him questions, and talk with many others in the neurotech industry. So I hope you'll join us at Device Talks West. We're not just focusing on neurotech. We'll be talking about vascular, neurovascular, surgical robotics, diabetes, AI. We got the whole landscape covered. So I hope you'll join us at Device Talks West again, October 18th and 19th at the Santa Clara Convention Center. Go to devicetalks.com to register. If you want to save yourself a step, go to west.devicetalks.com, and that'll take you right to the page where you can see the agenda, the speaker lists, and everything else. My Boston accent just came out. Speaker lists. So yes, please join us at Device Talks West. And I'll actually be in California next week. If you're getting this episode before Tuesday, I'll be at the MedTech Vision Conference. If you're there, please say hello. I would love to meet you and catch up on what you're doing. All right, without any further delay, let's get this podcast episode started. All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Chris Newmarker, how are you, sir?
Doing well, Tom. Doing well.
I see you in the fancy new home office there. Moving on up there.
It's more like got the family moved into a new home this summer. Like with grown kids. That little 50s Rambler we had in St. Louis Park wasn't doing it for us anymore. So
kids keep growing. All right. Well, we're going to hit upon the news of the week. Not good news, unfortunately. But it's a story that you're continuing to cover. This is involving Philips' partial settlement of some of the actions associated to their CPAP machine. So, Chris, let's just focus on a few things. What's the news of the week? What happened this week?
Exactly. This is our Newmarker's news maker of the week. I guess we'll keep on going with this, but unfortunately, it's not a cheery one at all. But what we had this week was Philips announcing that they'd reached a class action lawsuit settlement over their massive recall involving CPAPs and other respiratory devices that have potential sound abatement foam degradation. There's the potential that the foam could get into device airways. They reached a settlement, still subject to court approval in the U.S. District Court in Western Pennsylvania, in multi-district litigation, and it's for at least $479 million.
But this is a partial settlement. What does this cover?
All right. Exactly. I mean, this is not the end. Yeah. I mean, this is maybe, knock on wood, hopefully the beginning of the end. But I mean, this is covering, lawsuits over economic loss. This is basically you had to go get a new CPAP, get it refurbished, whatever, and you had to, spend money to do this, and this, and or you were like someone helping finance this, and they're covering that loss, and that's for at least $479 million. And then, what's left is, we got all kinds of, lawsuits, claiming, injury, medical bills, whatnot, and that doesn't even involve, the ongoing consent decree talks that Philips has with the U.S. Department of Justice. So more to come, and we'll keep on covering this over on Mass Device.
And once again, we should say Philips is not admitting to any wrongdoing as part of the settlement. So this, as you said, the story will continue to unfold as more suits and settlements come down the pike.
Yeah, exactly. And it certainly is, one of the most significant recalls that we've seen in the industry, in the past decade or so. I mean, just for perspective, I mean, these are like millions of devices that have been recalled, and FDA's reporting system for medical device problems, at this point has more than 100,000 reports in, that are claiming problems. 385 of those reports, mention deaths, and to be fair, that system's very passive. These are just reports coming in, but yes, it's a serious recall. It's pulled Philips out of the respiratory devices, market, for more than 2 years at this point. And to his credit, Philips CEO Roy Jacobs, when he took over there, got promoted up and took over last year, pretty quickly was, saying that, like, overall, I mean, not admitting wrongdoing, but just overall just saying that, they were, the company is like deeply sorry about the recall.
And as you've noted in the wrap-up article, you have and we'll have the link in the show notes. There was 10 years of very little news, if no news. The product came out in 2011. Everything was fine until 2021. And then reports and complaints started to come in after that. And that's when things started to unfold.
Exactly.
So it'll be interesting to see how, as this is delved into, if there's some instance of whether it was just a decade-long degrading of this foam, or whether it was a new type of foam or a new type of I don't know if this has been discussed at all, but it's just interesting that there was nothing for 10 years and then suddenly all of this. But as we're seeing more medical devices kind of come into being used in the home, it'll be interesting to see how this is watched by medical device manufacturers to ensure that they're, I guess, monitoring their systems more closely, tracking their performance, ensuring that they're holding together as they should. Because as more devices are used at home, it's going to be it doesn't obviously absolve these companies of any sort of responsibility just because it's in someone's house for 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that it's in a health, that's not in a healthcare system means that you just don't have those health providers right there to act upon the recall, and so yeah, I think it's changing the dynamic of how medical device companies need to respond to safety problems.
All right, and just to compare and contrast, I know you put together a list of some of the other major medical device settlements that have occurred and that are finalized. Again, this one is different than that, but what are some of the top 3 or 4 that again, this isn't an exhaustive list, but I'm sure you'll be working on an exhaustive list because it's an interesting topic. But what are some of the other larger settlements in medical devices? Again, saying that this is not the end of this story. This is
right,
not
exactly.
the final story.
But probably. Yeah, when you see something like 479 million, I mean, I just did some quick research through Mass Device Archives. Like, what are some of the big major payouts that we've seen in settlements, and over the past decade, and I mean, you saw that Bayer, in 2020, settled 90% of the claims related to its Essure, birth control device for $1.6 billion. You had, J&J in 2013, settling a good chunk of their metal hip implant lawsuits for $2.5 billion. Stryker had its own $1 billion, hip implant lawsuit settlement, around that same time as well. And and earplugs, they're technically medical device, but I'll throw that out as well. I mean 3M just recently settled, it's like these like countless lawsuits over earplugs sold to the military, were potentially defective for like $6 billion. I mean, so I mean, definitely, I mean, it's not at the same level as what you might see in pharma, where we've seen these giant opioid settlements or whatnot. But the medtech industry has multi-billion-dollar lawsuit settlements, and we'll see how all this Philips litigation plays out.
Well, you'll continue to track this story. I'll continue to take the credit for it. No, I'm just kidding. I would never
There you
take.
go. There you go. Oh, come on.
But
It's fine. It's
folks
fine.
can
But
folks can find the
I mean,
coverage at Mass Device. We'll have a link to the exhaustive
yeah.
overview you did, which you released, I think, in August of this year.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we no, not in August. We actually did this a few months before, but yes, if you really, I mean really just to get the whole blow by blow over, how this unfolded. Like go to Mass Device and look up, how Philips significant respiratory devices recall unfolded. And this is
Mhm.
like a whole timeline that just goes through like all of the news around this recall since 2021. You can really just get an idea of how this is all, played out, and we'll be continuing to update this timeline. And this is, this is definitely not just about like sitting around, saying like, oh, look at this horrible recall they had, over at Philips. I mean, I think, there are some, good lessons that, the industry at the whole is going to, hopefully be able to draw from this, and including even just what you were saying about like, the need for better, safety communications for, devices used in the home.
Absolutely. All right. All right. Well, great job. Great insights. Again, we want to just kind of cover this to let folks know that this is big news, but it's not the end of this story.
Yeah.
And we'll see.
But as I said, hopefully it's the end of the beginning at least. Hopefully we'll be able to be moving on from this.
Good point. All righty. Thanks, Chris Newmarker.
Always happy to be here, Tom.
Well, Kurt Haggstrom, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you very much. Great to be here.
I'm excited to share the Synchron story on the podcast, and we're going to have you at DeviceTalks West. You'll be giving a short presentation there and taking some questions from the audience. I'm sure it'll be a lot of interested people in the audience trying to understand this next phase of neurotechnology. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But first, let's talk about you. Kurt, what's your path into the medical device industry? Because you are truly a medical device person. You've got a great medical device pedigree.
Yeah, a great question. And I guess it starts from the very beginning. I went to school for biomedical engineering out of Worcester Polytechnical Institute right there in Massachusetts. And
I wanted my son to go there, but
excellent.
He's in Indiana now. He left the state. So anyway, great school.
Yeah,
WPI.
very good.
Yeah.
So, coming out of there, I got a job within a company that's no longer around, but maybe familiar to a lot of folks is the Business Covidien that spawned out of Tyco Healthcare,
Sure.
or Tyco itself. And I started off in, R&D engineering because I came out of engineering school. So I started off on R&D with a great organization, really designing and developing intravascular devices, so vascular access devices. And we also handled some other patient, care level devices. So it was, for me, I kind of fell in love with the medicine, the body coming out of school. And that even spawned a little bit earlier is, I played sports there. And as an athlete, I had to rely on certain braces, and I have had surgery. So from an early on, in my youth, I was intrigued by kind of the interaction with physicians, the human body, and how you heal it, how you support it, and the engineering that goes behind that. And so I think really that's kind of the nidus of where I kind of fell in love with the medical devices. And then from there, as I was in a big organization, I was able to see other paths within the organization from a functional standpoint that also intrigued me. Designing technologies that help people, at the end of the day. And then there led, a little bit in the commercial direction, doing sales and marketing and business development, but always actually loving the development side and novelty around developing great new technologies for people. And so for me, that was kind of kind of a path, but it wasn't a big company path, to be honest with you. But I think and then eventually started working with Medtronic. I know you're familiar with that, and the audiences, I'm sure, as well. Another great company built on a mission that is there to, keep the patient in their, in the forefront and really center around the needs of patients and getting them up and back and healthy. And so for me, it's just been, I guess, my lifelong, when I go to sleep at night and I wake up in the morning, to know that, kind of that mission-driven life, knowing that I get to go out and help people. And if I'm away from my family, I'm doing it because I'm helping people and other families and loved ones. And so to me, it's just been my passion. That's just been, kind of, again, it's been my career to date. So
that's great. We're just going into the engineering realm right now, talking about young people in engineering. Aerospace seems to be an area of interest for students going into engineering. Do you feel like biomedical ever really got like a point where it was the hot sort of specialty where everyone wanted to go into? Because I think it should be. but I don't know if I ever obtained that status.
God, it's funny you say that. I actually think so. When I did the biomedical engineering, we were the first class undergraduate at WPI, and now it's one of the thriving undergraduate programs there.
Good point.
And so I actually think that the biomedical sciences and engineering has I wouldn't say it's plateaued by any means. And I actually think that it's still growing, it does probably compete with the aerospaces and other kind of novel engineering fields, but I do see it, even the biomedical getting even more specialized, such as neuro, right?
Yep.
Neurotech and stuff. So I actually think I think we have a healthy pipeline of folks that are interested in these type technologies. And that comes from, we had a great group of interns this year and a long line out the door, as you can imagine, to come work for us. And so I get excited about, I think, what is still exciting field and maybe even yet to hit its peak, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, especially with technologies like the ones Synchron's putting together. I think you're starting to get into popular culture a bit more and tell an even broader story. So you went from Covidien/Medtronic to Cardinal Health, where you were vice president of marketing for 3 years. Talk about that transition a bit from, I guess you were doing marketing for neurovascular at Medtronic, so you kind of already made that transition to marketing. So talk about the transition to marketing, but then the decision to leave Medtronic to go to Cardinal Health.
And that's a great point, is that I did do marketing and it was developing novel technologies and brought those technologies globally, when I was working with Medtronic and the neurovascular group there. And for me, going to Cardinal Health and really the Cordis business within Cardinal Health. So it wasn't necessarily what maybe people think of Cardinal and the supply side of it. The Cordis business they acquired from Johnson & Johnson. And then that's has a rich history in the cardiovascular space and really kind of invented interventional cardiology. And so for me, it was similar from a interventional standpoint, but it also allowed me to kind of manage the P&L, manage the overarching bigger strategy for the organization, for that U.S. business. So for me, it was really starting to manage at scale in a business and really try to revitalize that Cordis business within Cardinal. And then eventually it kind of spun off in private equity, but the Cordis business. But I think that for me, it was, again, trying to work at strategy at a much higher level. We had already got to number one within the neurovascular. And so it was really trying to revitalize a business and kind of, again, put another challenge in front of me. So
how did your engineering background and skill set sort of transition or serve you well in marketing? And do you give that advice to engineers to get into marketing or some other field within medical devices? Because I think it's great to be dealing directly with customers and understanding what they need. It probably makes you a better engineer, I would imagine.
Yeah, when you think about our customer base as medtech, in the medtech arena, our physicians are engineers of the body. Our technologies are very high technologies and complex, and the body's complex. So when you look at the nuggets that you get to market, if you can really understand the technology and then really extract from the users or the physicians, the surgeons, how they use this technology and apply the technology. For me, that's actually what makes the best commercial folks. And a lot of times I talk to engineers about this path. And a lot of times I even hire engineers to come into marketing to apply that type of same creativity and thought and scientific approach to the marketing side of it. And so that's something that I've advocated, my whole career around, engineers that maybe see beyond the lab or the technical piece of, it's really a language that they learn. So once you understand the language of engineering, then you can apply it to whether it's marketing, business development, quality, all these things really come to fruition. But I think we work in an environment that's, in med device that is extremely technical, and understanding that language is a huge advantage.
Is marketing in medical devices sort of get its due from other departments? Is it seen as just sort of, it does just promote what others have done, but it's an important function in marketing. It really is to really tell the story of a device. You can develop the best device, but you're not able to explain effectively what it does. It's not going to go as far as it could.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think folks that maybe haven't lived through kind of med device or product management kind of look at marketing as, again, advertisement and things like that. Yep. And yes, of course, that's a portion of it. But what I like to, and I've kind of preached this again, my career, is that product marketing is really the hub of the business. You manage, you're that mini CEO of the business, and it's your job to find the opportunities within the market, understand the novelties around, say, and/or gaps of technologies in the market, bring together the engineers to solve a problem that you may have now discovered from a customer base. And so it's really pulling the different functions within the business, come together, find a solution, and then realize that opportunity through the commercial phase of product development. And so I think it's really important, and I think it's kind of misinterpreted sometimes what marketing actually does in the business.
Oh, it's great points. Well, let's talk about where you are now. Synchron, speaking of marketing, I'm looking at the website right now, and I guess it's called the hero statement on the website, is the unlocking the natural highways of the brain, the endovascular brain-computer interface. I mean, boom, that just sounds cool. How'd you come to know of Synchron, know of the opportunity, and what finally led you to make that transition to a smaller startup?
Yeah, good questions. And so I knew Dr. Tom Oxley from my travels abroad in Australia and in New Zealand. So I actually met him back in 2014 or 15, I believe. And he was presenting on some of his early benchtop and animal work. In that meeting, it was a very small neurotech meeting that was there. And I was presenting on one of our innovations that we were launching in that area. And then we ended up having a few of us went out for dinner, and you got to chat with him a little bit more, and I think befriended and saw he had a vision, and I thought it was amazing. And it's like, wow, this is really, really different from what I had seen before, which is a little bit like plumbing. Now this is taking plumbing in a whole new realm, right? To understand how we can interpret and understand the signals of the brain. And so years fast forward, I've kind of watched Synchron grow, and all of a sudden I saw that they were in humans out in Australia in the switch trial. And then I saw that they were now in the early feasibility trial here in the United States. And I was like, wow, to go from where he was and then to where we are today took drive and in just passion behind, the need for helping patients out, but also the technology evolution in itself. And so, but a little over a year ago, I reconnected with Tom just through a colleague of ours, kind of a business contact, and started chatting with them for a little bit. And, we're at a phase in the company where we need to really start to plan for the future. Topics like reimbursement are now kind of on the table, and we have to figure out a strategy there. And so him knowing my background and knowing having from a development standpoint, engineering, I can still help with those aspects of this, but also now thinking commercially, how do we bring a product like this to market? I think we decided to, okay, hey, let's partner up and let's make this happen. And so for me, it was interesting going from, as we talked about, a big company now to a small company. And I kind of course, I had to speak to my wife about this, and say, hey, there's always a risk going to a small company, but this is a very, very unique opportunity. And, we have some great people that are part of the team. I got a chance to meet the leadership, Ricky Banerjee, our VP of engineering, really got along with her. As well as Tom. So I came down and really immediately felt part of the team and knew that this team was going to succeed. And so for me, I told my wife, like, look, I think there's an opportunity of a lifetime. It's on the front edge of innovation, which really brings me back to my core of what I love to do. And so it actually it was somewhat of an easy decision, to be honest with you, this move down here. I'm like, I couldn't think of another opportunity that I want to be working for right now. So certainly excited to be here.
Very cool. So you moved from Massachusetts down to Synchron's based in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Neuro EP again. Go to your website. Neurointerventional electrophysiology is a new field of medical science that combines and elevates three existing areas of research: neuroprosthetics, neuromodulation, and neurodiagnostics. So it's a big mission, big charter. What is the technology that's going to get you to create products and progress in those three areas?
Our first product to market will be the prosthetics, the neuroprosthetic. That's the BCI. So that's probably what's most familiar to the audience, as we're competing against some big players out in the market, as you know. But that'll be our first product. But what allows us to play in those other areas, whether it's diagnostics or modulation, is really the platform of the stentrode itself. This is an endovascular tool that allows it to collect and potentially stimulate from an intervascular standpoint. And so really that's the foundation of our sensing core competence and our access core competence, allows us to reach the different parts of the brain and potentially, again, either collect signals and or stimulate out of those same areas. And so that's the kind of the platform play in which we're looking at being able to, whether it's a short-term understanding brain injury, or when you look at closed loop systems, when you look at different types of monitoring capabilities, it really starts to open up the door because we're going about this in that minimally invasive endovascular approach.
Help me understand first the technology or the device. Where is it being implanted, both on the body, but also where within that part of the body?
This is it's a pretty straightforward procedure, and the beauty of this is that I actually feel comfortable that at any hospital today that has that type of stroke interventionalist, somebody that does that minimally invasive neurosurgery, that they're treating stroke from a mechanical standpoint, has the skill set to be able to do this procedure. And so this procedure now would say be offered in everyone's backyard. And I think that's a very important point. It doesn't take a robot to place or anything else. And so the procedure is there's a small incision, just like they do diagnostic wise in the IJ. So in the jugular vein of the patient, you then access up through the sinus, the transverse sinus, and the superior sagittal sinus. So that's the veins that run kind of right above the brain itself. We go up there, which again is a very common area that people do access for different means, whether it's stenting or whether it's thrombectomy. They do approach this venous system, and it's a fairly large vessel too. So that's the other thing. It's not a tiny little vessel. It's a fairly large vessel that you're putting a stent-like structure in. But again, you do a minimally invasive approach. We go and put the stentrode up within the superior sagittal sinus. Then the lead, comes out of the vein itself, and then we tunnel that lead down into a little pocket where we put the receiving transmitting unit. So much like a pacemaker, there's like 200,000 pacemakers placed in the US a year. It's the same exact procedure, same skill set that occurs. And so very similar to some of the DBS units itself. And so, there's a little bit of tunneling, and then you go down and you place within the pocket that receiving and transmitting unit. And at that point, you seal it up. You alleviate having to kind of drill open the skull to get to the brain. It's a simple way up and a simple placement that is again, very quick, very straightforward, almost like a diagnostics to a point, but you are placing a stent, which is again, familiar to these physicians. So at that point, it's fully implantable. There's nothing there. The patient does go home after the surgery, and then all the activities happen in the house. So there's no need to come back to the lab or anything like that. Everything's done in the comforts of the home in this early work that we're doing. So that's, like I said, it's a fairly straightforward procedure. And like, I can go there in the morning. We could be doing our team can go there in the morning, and we can do some, training, and we could do the case in the afternoon. And these physicians, again, it's the same muscle memory, the same training that they've had since fellowship, that they, same skill set that they learn.
And help me understand what is being stimulated. You're stimulating something on the vessel wall itself, correct? Is it nerves? Is it some other tissue, connective tissue? What is being stimulated?
So great question. So this first system, the neuroprosthetics, does not stimulate at all. Actually,
okay.
just records. When you think of that platform play in the future in that EP world, I think there's opportunity to stimulate out of the same system. But today, there is no stimulus. It is purely recording the signals of the motor cortex.
And what does that data tell you? When will this be used? What kind of information will you collect?
This is a really important question, because oftentimes people think, well, you have a chip in the head, or you have this type of technology, and you can read my mind and read my thoughts. Well, yeah, and so
you've been reading my diary, yeah, no,
exactly. It's very particular on where we put this device over the motor cortex, and really, it's reading motor intent. And so when you think about, say, moving your hands or wrists or feet, this creates a motor intent signal, which we then translate into an actionable motor output. And that motor output today is the digital environments, which, again, 30 years ago, we would have thought, this is a pretty cool technology, a smartphone, which everybody uses. Now everybody takes it for granted, almost around the world. And so being able to now, people that have motor impairment and no longer have the use of their arms, there's a real need there. There's a real need there to connect to that digital world. So we translate those motor intent signals, restore that kind of functionality of the motor neurons, and then the output is in digital format. And so we're able to, again, control that, whether it's kind of scrolling, clicking, zooming, all these functions that you see in a digital environment, we're able to do with those motor intent signals.
Okay. You're Chief Commercial Officer. Help me understand the commercial strategy for this going forward. Who are you going to be able to help, you hope, initially? What does that product look like? How is it sold? Where is it sold?
Yeah, so this is of course, an indication itself, right? We're working with the FDA on that.
Sure.
We're still wrapping up our early feasibility trial. But if you can envision all the etiologies, all the diseases, whether it's ALS, stroke, spinal cord, all the ones that there's the symptom of motor impairment, where again, when you have upper limbs and you can't use your upper limbs to use, again, connect to the digital environment, is where we see kind of the audience or the patient population is those patients. When you look at the rollout of this technology, again, it's a class 3 medical device. There's no quick path, to get to market with an innovation like this. It has to go through, the traditional class 3 medical device route, like we all know from an implantable standpoint. So it's got to go through all the same safety regulations, the performance regulations. So we're going to take that path, partner with the FDA to take this to market. The next will be our hopefully pivotal study that we'll be conducting with the FDA, and it will go through the PMA route. When you look at commercializing an innovation like this, for me, simplicity is key. I think when you look at the tradition of, and really I would say not the tradition, but the foundation of BCI and all the work that's been done over the last 30, 40 years, the good thing is a lot of these founding researchers and scientists are still, still working, and still pushing and understanding how to interpret the brain. But there's got to be this translational element. And so one of the things that always becomes very apparent talking to some of these folks is it has to be simple. It has to be out of the box, calibrating these things. It has to be really usable for patients. And that's really where we're centered around. If you think about what that patient needs is something they can rely on all the time, whether it's at night, whether it's kind of on the go, and really kind of the out of the box experience as possible. So when you look at how do we commercialize this in the future, I think it's one, the surgery still needs to be done in a hospital. So there is that piece of it. So much like any other elective surgery that you go and you get an elective surgery, this will be an elective surgery. Very straightforward from a technique standpoint and everything. But working with the persons and or patients, caregivers, their physicians, whether they have a neurologist, it'll kind of go through that same referral pathway to the surgeons. They'll be putting in the device. And then they'll go home. And when they go home, there's certainly a training element to being able to use the system. But the beauty of, I think, what we've been able to achieve is that from day one, when the system gets activated, they can use it. And so I think that's really something that maybe is different from what we're doing, maybe from others or not. I'm not sure because I don't preview all the behind the scenes of what goes on with some of our competitors. But, they're in their home and they're using it that first day that gets activated. And so I think that's kind of the key point. And so again, we're going to be held under the same regulations as other medical devices.
Sure.
We want this to be as comfortable in the home and as simple to use as possible for patients. Not only patients, but the caregivers are a really key stakeholder in this equation as well. People are taking care of their loved ones, for instance, that if they have ALS or these other things, it becomes a huge kind of a weight on their lives as well. So as we drive independence, autonomy for that individual, that also creates independence and autonomy for the caregivers so they can live a more fuller life as well. And so that's kind of when you look at where, like what type of metrics we're trying to drive to, those are the things that we're really trying to improve when it comes to that environment of the patient and just the patient needs in general.
Gotcha. Final question, just looking at your website again, which is very nice, by the way. On your news, you've got an article from the Washington Post, and this is kind of the narrative that we're all watching from the outside. The race to beat Elon Musk to put chips in people's brains. Okay.
Yes.
That's going to get some clicks for sure. But what does this race from the inside actually look like? I have to imagine like you're not getting in at 6 a.m. Like it's not going to come down to a matter of inches or a matter of minutes. This is an emerging field. I don't know if being first really matters that much, but as one of the contestants or competitors in this race, how do you look at this competitive landscape? And I guess how will the winner be judged?
Yeah, I'll kind of take that question in a few ways. So when you look
please.
There's
when you look questions in there. So
so when you look at the race and how do we think about kind of being first to market, what I think about that is it's all about focus, right? So when we come in, as you can imagine, academically, there are a lot of things we can apply our resources to and questions that we can try to go uncover, right? We talked about the other different applications of this endovascular approach to sensing and stimulating. And so I think when you look at focus and understanding, okay, what are the core patient needs that we need to try to go address with this technology? And let's be laser focused and kind of somewhat put blinders on to say, let's go impact that patient and those needs and drive to a system that ultimately becomes a tool that they use every single day. In this space, because of how novelty and how the brain works and all the signals that you can read, you can easily get distracted to doing different activities and doing different things, controlling robotic arms and doing, you can do all these things. But ultimately what they need is a tool they can use every day to be able to reconnect to the world. And so for me, the race is keeping our team focused on our spend, right? So obviously we're a startup company, and so we're privately funded. So keeping that spend focused to driving to a product to market to help ultimately that need for the patient. So that's the race in my mind. I'm not necessarily racing the competition. I'm racing to help out the patient because we work with them every single week. We are in their homes working with them. And the ones that we don't work with, we're talking to because we're wanting to understand what are the needs and what's that tool, a technology ultimately need to look like. So that for us is really how we stay focused and think about the kind of the race standpoint. And I welcome competition. So that's the other piece. I think the more people that are focused in this area, the much better off patients will be at the end of the day, or people that have these impairments and motor impairments. And so I certainly welcome the competition, and I think it's all good. But to me, we keep ourselves kind of held to that race and focus to get a product out there to help people as soon as possible.
No, that's a great answer. And you're right. Whenever there's been a medical device field that's drawn a lot of players, obviously not everyone's going to get to the finish line to finish the race thing, but those who are there can then maybe bring in technologies that others developed and provide even better solutions for patients. So that's really right. What it's all about.
That's right.
Excellent. Well, this is an exciting story. I'm really excited to have you at DeviceTalks West. I'm glad we could give folks sort of a preview of what's going on, what Synchron's about your career. So great stuff. Thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Tom, really appreciate it, and look forward to the talk with DeviceTalks West.
All right, well, that is a wrap. Chris Newmarker, where can folks find you out there in social media land?
Best place to find me is on LinkedIn, Chris Newmarker, like a new marker.
Absolutely. And I'm on LinkedIn as well. And Tom Salemi at DeviceTalks. And well, let's start off with DeviceTalks West. That's happening October 18th and 19th. You heard the interview from Kurt Haggstrom of Synchron. He'll be there. So if this podcast interview generated some questions or thoughts that you'd like to share, make sure you register at DeviceTalks.com for DeviceTalks West. Again, October 18th and 19th at the Santa Clara Convention Center. Kurt Haggstrom will be leading a presentation about Synchron's brain interface system, and very cool stuff. And it's going to be fascinating to see where this field goes. Boy, having a hard time with the mouth word stuff today.
Shelley sold seashells on the seashore.
No, thank you.
No, but the Synchron. I mean, Synchron's especially going to be exciting because this is like a catheter delivered brain computer interface. I mean, This whole, delivering stents via catheter, it's kind of, it feels like very much like a tried and true technology at this point. So it's a really interesting strategy to use that to implant a BCI. So I'm excited to hear that talk at DeviceTalks West.
Absolutely. And we'll have other neuromodulation conversation as well with folks from Kayla and Setpoint and Cognito and a little company called Boston Scientific. So
I think I've heard of them. Yeah,
they're up and comers. So folks, make sure you join us at DeviceTalks West. Chris Newmarker, what do we want folks to do regarding this DeviceTalks podcast network?
Get a like, follow, subscribe.
That's right. Like, follow, and or subscribe to DeviceTalks Podcast Network to get DeviceTalks Weekly, Intuitive Talks, Stryker Talks, Boston Scientific Talks, Abbott Talks, and we're working on a few other crazy, kooky ideas that we're sure you'll enjoy. So, follow.
Don't worry, we won't have Newmarker Talks.
No, I've got you exclusively tied to the DeviceTalks podcast. We have a 5-year lucrative contract.
That's right. You got me locked in there.
Keep your Audible talents right here on this here podcast. But yeah, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. And of course, go to DeviceTalks.com. Check out our DeviceTalks Tuesdays lineup. We won't have one next week. I'll be at MedTech Vision, the MedTech Vision meeting next week on September 12th, a Tuesday. Cool. So if you folks are going to be there, please make sure you say hello. It'd be great to see folks in person. And that's it. All right, Chris Newmarker. Anything? Any words? Any last words?
Take care, everyone. Have a good weekend.
That'll do it. All right.
Fantastic. Enjoy the fall.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.